I honestly think that there isn't another industry or profession more suited to using the internet for marketing and to connect with clients than the veterinary profession. People want to hear from us. We're so lucky. People are fascinated in our content and they really want to engage with their vet. So it's an incredibly powerful tool and very exciting for the veterinary industry and the veterinary profession. So the video has introduced me amazingly well. So I'm just going to take you through very quickly this concept that Google developed back in 2011 of the zero moment of truth. So previously, before the internet happened, there was a three-step model of marketing that people used. So there would be a stimulus, which might be an advert. And then you might see the first moment of truth might be when you went into the supermarket and you saw the product on the shelf and you chose the product based on the packaging, how it was displayed in the shop. And then the second moment of truth would be when you got that product home, what was your experience like when you consumed it? Was it a good experience? And before the internet, if you got those three steps right, so you got your advert right, you got your packaging and presentation right, and you got the customer experience right, then your product would be a success or your service would be a success. And then the internet came along, and when Google started working and doing this research, they noticed that there was now a new, very important step in this process, and they named it the zero moment of truth. And that's when people go online, they find information about the product, they do their research, they look at reviews, they check out online videos. And Google and their research partners found that this was now one of the most important steps in this four-step marketing schedule. So we were very interested in this concept of the zero moment of truth, and I think it's really helpful as a mental map of how veterinary clients are choosing a vet. So we've adapted this for veterinary practice, and we think the stimulus would be something like they've driven past your practice, something like maybe their friend has recommended you to them. The first moment of truth would be when they get into the practice, what's their experience like in the waiting room, what's their experience like when they see the vet, how do they feel the pet's experience was? And then the second moment of truth, how the pet is afterwards. So we were intrigued by what this zero moment of truth might look like in veterinary practice. So I think most vets accept that people go online when they're choosing a vet, but nobody really knows exactly what they're doing. So we did some research. We surveyed 1,000 pet owners. We got 955 usable responses. And we asked them, if you had to choose a vet now, what would you do? This is UK pet owners, but hopefully interesting for you anyway. So the number one thing was ask friends. Now we did this survey, this is the second time we've done the survey. The first time we did it was in 2015, and this was exactly the same results. The first thing, most important thing people would do when choosing a vet is ask friends. And that doesn't really come as a big surprise. I think as vets, we are used to people saying we rely on word of mouth for people to find our veterinary practice. But we were quite surprised in 2015 and at the very end of 2017 when we found that the next most important thing that pet owners would do when choosing a vet is look at online reviews. And the reason that when we first saw that result, it came as a little bit of a surprise is that when you think of the resources that vets put into other things like the website, leaflets, Google, Facebook, online reviews are relatively overlooked, and yet this is the most important online thing that pet owners will do when choosing a vet. The next most important thing was the practice website, Google, Facebook page. So these are four online activities now. Ring up the vets and ask about them comes next, and look how tiny looking at practice leaflets is. So we then started looking at this by age, and we were really amazed at what we found. So the orange line there is the people that would ask friends, and you can see that that's pretty flat. So every age group of person asking friends is pretty much of the same importance. But now look at this checking of online reviews, and you can see we were just intrigued to see this crossover at the top there. So in the millennial age group, checking online reviews was statistically significantly more important than asking friends. So we were quite amazed by this result. It was quite cool because we know there's a lot of research on millennials, as the keynote yesterday showing that millennials are more likely to take importance from people's opinions that they don't actually know, but they found online. So this phenomenon is only going to get more important. And the internet aspect of choosing a vet is only going to get more important too. So look at this. This is the number of metrics that people used when choosing a vet. And you can see that the millennials there are using nearly 4 different metrics. So they're doing nearly four of those different things before choosing a vet. They're doing a lot of research, much more than the older generations. So as this demographic gets older, this is only going to get more and more important. So now we know what happens in the veterinary zero moment of truth, and we are able to visualize this concept of a zero moment of truth. We have developed 5 steps based on our experiences of working with veterinary practices with their internet marketing on how to basically win the zero moment of truth. So the first is trust, brand, inform, reduce friction, and then finally reach your audience. And I'm just going to go through each of those in turn. So the first is trust, and the reason that this comes first is because this was the most important thing that people would do after asking friends, and for the millennials it's the most important thing. And this fits with a lot of other research. So this is research from Nielsen showing that 62% of people will pay more for a brand that they trust. And I'm sure that we can all relate to that. I'm sure we've all paid a bit more for a brand that we know is going to be good and that we know we can rely on. Reviews increase conversion rate. There's a huge body of evidence showing that reviews, online reviews, increase the conversion rate. So that means more people landing on your website are going to pick up the phone and call you. So they're very powerful. And really, you've only got to read reviews, online reviews that people leave for vets to understand this phenomenon completely. Because you've only got to read through a few of these reviews written by pet owners. They're idiosyncratic. They tell unique stories from the owner's perspective about their experience with a vet. And they say such nice things about the veterinary practice that you could never say yourself. So it's not surprising, really, that reviews have a positive effect on conversion rate. It is really important when you start moving into online reviews to ask every client to leave a review. And you have to be really proactive about getting reviews. If you just sit back and wait for reviews to happen, unfortunately, what happens is only the very passionate people leave a review. Now, some of those people might be really passionately happy about the service that you've provided, but unfortunately, the passionately unhappy people end up slightly overrepresented compared to what they would be if you took an opinion of everybody. When you ask every person to leave a review, that's when you get the opinion of the happy majority of people that have just had a good, ordinary experience in your veterinary practice. I'm an avid review consumer. I don't make any purchasing decisions without checking reviews. And yet, I can count on one hand the number of reviews that I've left. And that's the problem. And the only times I've left a review are when, and this is a bit embarrassing, but when I've had a bad experience and I feel that I haven't been listened to, I've left a review. And then the other time I leave a review is if I'm asked to. If I'm not asked to, there's no way I'd go into the dentist, oh, hi, yeah, how are you doing? I'm fine, thanks for checking my teeth. There's no way I'd go home and think, oh, right, I must leave an online review. It's just not going to happen. This is a saying, a quote from my friend and practice management expert in the UK, Alison Lambert. Some of you might have heard of her. So I was telling her about the approach to review management and how you need to get the volume, you need to get everybody's opinion. Now, this is a saying in surgery the solution to pollution is dilution in the UK. Now, I don't know if that's the same for anybody else, but in the case of reviews, it's very true. So to dilute out the negative reviews and put them into context, you need a large volume of ordinary people having their opinion heard. So you can see reviews in search. These are Google reviews, and you can see how important they are because it might be the first thing you see about your practice. Google reviews also show in the knowledge box. So if you search for your vet practice name, this is the Google knowledge box that you'll see. And you can see here that the Google reviews are up here. And then down here, Google brings in reviews from third-party websites. And that shows how crucial these are for Google working out what position to rank your practice in. Reviews from third-party review websites can be pulled in as stars in the search engine results. This is just to say Google reviews are really crucial, but this cannot be your only platform for collecting reviews. We think probably less than 40% of people have a Google account. If you try and leave a Google review without having a Google account, this is what happens. And we've had vets say that owners have come in quite frustrated and upset because they've wanted to leave a review, they've wanted to help, and they haven't been able to do so. So you do need a selection of platforms. It's important to display reviews on your website so that people can see the reviews when they're making that critical decision, do they phone you or not? And reviews on social media are really important. What you'll probably find on social media is that those reviews happen without you trying. And because you have to like the Facebook page, for example, to leave a review, they tend to be used quite positive. You do get negative reviews as well. And I know that there's Gregory's running a workshop later on dealing with negative reviews, so that will be really interesting. I think it's really crucial when you're collecting reviews to try and measure the client experience at the same time. So using a platform that allows you to collect data, for example, about Net Promoter Score, because to get good reviews, people need to have had a good experience in your clinic. And sadly, it's nothing to do with the quality of clinical care that you're providing, whether or not people have a good experience and leave a good review. This is just a photo of a practice that leaving reviews has worked for. So this is Penmelon Vets in Cornwall. They got 650 reviews in 1 year, and they got loads of press coverage. They link that to having 10% growth in that year. And also they noticed a real upsurge in people, vets, applying for jobs there. And because this does affect people's perception of your practice for employees and for potential new clients. So that's trust. Brand comes next. So you'll remember the results of the survey. So reviews came first. We've then got website, Facebook, and Google. But you're not going to win the veterinary zero moment of truth purely by having a Facebook page, having a website, and having Google. It's what you communicate through those platforms that's important. At the end of the day, the zero moment of truth is a decision-making process. People are choosing between your practice and your competitors. And that's why to win the veterinary zero moment of truth, it's really important that you have a strong brand. So a brand is essentially, and I know Aunt Jay's going to be talking more about this later on, the personality of your vet practice, why your vet practice is unique, and people's perceptions of your veterinary practice. And the challenge with internet marketing is that you need to be able to portray that brand very quickly in some cases. When people land on your website, you've got a matter of seconds to grab their attention and communicate your brand to them. Please remember, when people are choosing between vet practices in the zero moment of truth, this is not scientific analysis. So the way that we, as scientists and vets, would choose a vet practice is probably quite different to the way that most members of the public would choose a vet practice. This is a quote actually from a book called Oversubscribed, and I think it sums it up. People don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. That's why you have luxury brands. Emotions will win every time, and even with the most intelligent people. So this is your challenge. In the 0 moment of truth, you've got to connect really quickly with these people choosing a vet and make them feel an emotional connection to your veterinary practice, make them feel that this is where they want to bring their pet. So I'm just going to take you through something. There's obviously books like written about brands, papers written about brand. I could talk about brand for probably about a week, and there are other people who spent their whole life studying brands. But I'm just going to show you something practical that I've found is really useful when we're working with veterinary practices to help them develop a brand that connects emotionally with people. So we start off by drawing this circle and we fill in the what's. Now this is the type of marketing that comes very naturally to vets. This is all the equipment you've got, all the kit you've got, the fact that you've maybe got keyhole spays, the qualifications of your staff. This rolls off the tongue really easily and everyone loves talking about it because it's what's important to us. It's not necessarily all of it what's important to the client. We then go through the hows. So how do you provide that service? Do you provide it in a low-cost way? Do you provide it in a caring way? Are you gold standard? Are you very friendly? And then we move to the more difficult bit, to extract from people, which is the why. And we just ask people, why do you do what you do? If you took money out of the equation, forget finance, and you think, why did you become a vet? Why do you bother going into the surgery to look after people's pets each day? Why do you care? And get your staff involved, because sometimes we'll find there's a lady on reception that just knows exactly why you're doing what you're doing, even if you're not quite sure yourself and you can't quite articulate the words. So get the whole team on board and ask them why they do what they do. And that's when you'll come up with some really powerful marketing. So if you want to know a little bit more about this, I'd recommend just Google Simon Sinek. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but it's a very powerful form of marketing for vet practices. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of why marketing. So this is the London Cat Clinic, and this is really explaining why they do what they do. Why did they bother? We do what we do because cats are unique and they deserve a special place. This is another really nice example of why marketing. We all have the same passion and undeniable love of animals. This is where it starts to get really powerful and attractive for clients. So once you've developed your brand, you've then got to make sure that your brand goes out consistently across all of your digital marketing platforms. So wherever people encounter you, they're getting the same messages about your brand. You need your why, but you also need your values, your mission, your objectives. And then you need to determine just practical things, like what font are you going to use? What logo are you going to use? Making sure that these portray your values. And what tone of voice are you going to use so that that's consistent in all of your communications? I'm just going to show you a website from a vet in Belfast in Northern Ireland. So we were talking to these guys for a while, and Dan, the guy that owns the practice, was very frustrated because he felt that if you went into his practice, you got a much better service than if you went into the neighbouring practice. For a few reasons. His practice was owned by himself. He has a very small team that have been there for 9 years, at least, as the shortest person. They're very experienced. You see the same vet each time. You just have a great experience when you go in. And he said, down the road, they've got new graduates. They're always turning over staff. That's all very well, but how do you explain that in the 2 seconds when people land on a website? So that was our challenge. And we actually came up with the idea of using a video header to portray this. And I think that this website, in the end, does get that message across through video in a way that words never could. So I think you can tell from this video that this is a caring, friendly, small team. This is a practice in Lincolnshire in the United Kingdom. They are very different. They are a gold standard practice. They've got all the kit. The guy that runs it, David, just said to me, we just do things a bit differently to everybody else. We're basically, he didn't say this, but everything about the practice he thinks is a lot better than all the competitors. So we came up with this way, communicating that immediately as soon as somebody lands on the website. This practice is a mixed practice in Ireland, and Noel here just said, we just provide a really efficient service. We do what we say we're going to do. We know all our clients really well, and Noel's very much central to that brand. So you'll have noticed how a lot of portraying of our messages comes through photos and video, and what a powerful way that is to portray a brand. This is the opposite to that. This is stock imagery that you can buy. And stock imagery is very heavily used on vets' websites, and it's really our sort of bugbear. It's such a waste of space. Every bit of space on your website is so valuable, particularly the space that you land on the homepage without scrolling down. And yet we see lots of websites with stock images that tell you nothing about the practice. It's a waste of space. Please don't use them. Instead, invest in a professional photographer to come to your practice and take beautiful photos that are not only beautiful, but also help to communicate your brand and help to tell a story about your veterinary practice. A really crucial part of being able to achieve this is to have a photographer's brief. So if you're going to employ a photographer, make sure that you have written a brief for them. This is an example of the type of brief that we would use when using a photographer. So you can see there, the photographer needs to know what your brand is like. They need to know what the main message you're trying to portray is. They need to know your why so that they can make sure that the photographs reflect that. So we just give a few details on how we want the photos taken. We want a list of specific photos. This is really important because otherwise you get halfway through building a website and realize you don't have all the photos that you need. And then this is quite important. This is a list that we've built up over the years, and you'll notice here, so please avoid anything that makes you think, I hope that never happens to my pet. Because that's not how you want to make people feel when they're looking at your website. Could you just raise your hands if you have any clients that feel like this about their pet? Could you raise your hands if some of your clients feel this way about their pets? Okay, so I'm going to show you a photo now and just see how this photo makes you feel. Does that photo make you feel happy or uncomfortable? So now I'm going to show you a photo taken from a vet practice website. Okay, I have taken a bit of an extreme photo, but all the time we find on Facebook and websites pictures of anaesthetized animals undergoing procedures. So if my pet's my baby and my child, as a pet owner, I'm going to feel the same way that you felt when you saw that photograph. It's just that we're desensitized because we've had so many years of veterinary work. It's hard to see it through pet owner eyes. So Facebook's a great way to communicate your brand in a bit more detail, so to tell stories about it. And this is a Facebook post which allows the practice to show they feel the same way about animals as their owners do. And the wonderful thing about Facebook is you can drip feed this, so you can be constantly giving out messages about how you feel, your why, everything. This is a much better way. This is an animal that's been in for a surgical procedure. Instead of showing the procedure, we're seeing the pet, all happy, back to his normal life afterwards. And of course, you can show happy photos of pets in the practice as well. That's important. So social brand value for vets. Don't forget to talk. Every vet practice I've ever met goes above and beyond the call of duty so many times to help their owners and to help the pets. Please make sure that you let people know about this, because people will pay more for a brand that they feel is ethical. Ensure all of your target audience connect emotionally. So this is research by Royal Canin, and they found that if you have more pictures of cats on your Facebook page and on your website, people buy more cat food. It's very easy to leave out pictures of cats, I think because they're in sort of baskets and carriers. So please make sure that cats are represented, because if you're a cat owner and you just go onto a website and you just see dogs, it's quite off-putting. So please make sure that cat owners feel welcome. Okay, so the next way that you can run the 0 moments of truth is by making life easier for people, so reducing friction, reduce the time, energy, and effort required to work with you. And if you think about Amazon, that's the entire secret to their success, is they've just made life a bit easier. They've just made it a bit easier to get hold of shopping. Netflix have just made it a bit easier to watch videos. If we really need to be doing this as a profession to stay up to date. So we asked people in our survey, if you asked your vet a question over social media, how quickly would you expect to reply? Now, these results really changed between 2015 and back end of 2017, beginning of 2018. So in 2015, only 15% of people expected their vets to reply to them within an hour. In 2018, that had gone up to over a third of people expect their vet to reply to them. And I think this is societal change is happening really fast. In 2015, only a third of people expected their vet to reply within 4 hours. Now that's over 50%. These expectations are so difficult for you guys, and I'm not saying that you should necessarily meet them completely, but I think trying to work out how you can manage it as well as possible should be a priority, really. And also you can make things easier for people just by making sure your website's easy to use, that it's mobile optimized. I really think you should have a form. It's very easy to make a form so that people can register their pet online. Some people want to do things in the evening, and if your practice offers this and another doesn't, then you're going to make life easier for that person and they're going to go to your practice. Online appointment booking, I think, is really worth considering. Again, lots of people are doing this in the evening. This is Vetstoria. Some of the practice management systems have their own appointment booking, but you can get these systems like Vetstoria that work with anybody. We've been running live chat now for vet practices. We've just had over 500 chats now with the public, and it's been absolutely fascinating. And we can really feel how we're helping people. I think this is going to be a great tool for veterinary practices. So this sits on the website and pops up so that people can chat to you. We're actually doing this on behalf of the vet practices to save them the sort of time and hassle. But a vet practice could do it themselves. And the sort of questions we've had were the kinds we were expecting. So we've had a lot of price checking. We have a lot of questions about puppy parties. We have questions from people who aren't sure whether their pet needs help or not. But this is the type of thing that's really interesting and quite exciting, really. I don't hear that well, and sometimes it's quite noisy in the background on the phone. That's why they're using live chat. At least I know I won't be making a faux pas by asking for it to be done. So people asking what they perceive to be silly questions and feeling more comfortable doing that when they're not face-to-face with somebody. So reduce time and effort as much as you can. And finally, for this session, inform. So this is what we believe at Vet Help Direct, that before taking on a pet, so before you even get the pet, throughout the pet's life, and at the very end of the pet's life, vet practices should be the trusted source that pet owners turn to. I don't think anyone here would disagree with that. And offline, you guys are probably all there already. But I think where we need to work on that is with the online. I don't think everybody's occupying that position online. And I think it's so essential that we as a profession, as well as you as a local veterinary practice, are occupying that position of the person that people will turn to when they want advice about their pet. And so it turns out that we can inform people, we can educate them online incredibly effectively. And it's not just our industry that have noticed how effective and how powerful it can be to educate clients online. So this is called content marketing, what we're doing, what vets are doing when they try and educate people online. And by informing and educating people, you're empowering them as customers. You're helping them to make confident decisions. You're taking away a bit of the risk because they understand the process that their pet will be undergoing. They understand what the costs will be. And you're raising awareness of the necessity of the service. How will people bring their pets in to be vaccinated, for example, if they don't realise that this is necessary? So you're basically removing barriers that people might have. So the tools of content marketing, so informing clients, these are the 4 main ones that we use effectively for vets, so blogs, bolting things onto your website that are pre-made resources for owners, Facebook, and emails. And when it comes to what you're going to write, when we're content planning with our vets, one of the best ways of working out what to write is thinking about what questions you get asked on a regular basis. And again, involve the whole team. Ask the reception staff, what questions do you get asked all the time? What's the one thing you wish your clients knew? Ask them to keep a little notepad and just make a note of any questions as they come in. And you'll find that reception staff are getting the questions that people are perhaps too embarrassed to ask the vet. If you can answer those questions on your website, you'll be overcoming barriers for people that may be stopping them from bringing their pets into the vet, as well as making them better pet owners and improving animal welfare. What do you think are your owners' fears? What do they worry about? What are their concerns? Can you answer those questions on your blog? Can you write Facebook posts about them? What stops people from seeking veterinary care for their pet? What gets in the way of doing it? Can you break down those barriers by writing informative content or videos? And this is a really good example of that. This is a resource from Royal Canin and this is to give to your clients, so travel tips for bringing your cat to the veterinary practice. Now, I'm told that you've got a USB, I think in your bag, and on that USB is a video that you can share on Facebook, you can put on your website, that takes people through how to bring their cat to the vet, so that becomes less of a barrier for them, and they're more likely to bring their cat in to see you. So I'm going to play you a voice now, which is a vet in the UK who's a famous vet called Noel Fitzpatrick. He's known as Supervet, and he's a bit of a phenomenon. Has anyone heard of Supervet? Yeah, there's a few hands going. He runs road shows, so he's like a pop star. He goes on stage and talks about cases that he's seen, and people buy tickets to come and watch him. He's also got a prime-time TV show. Here he is on a radio show talking about how he thought of the idea for Supervet. We did test this. Okay, so in it, he says, I think I can hear it, but really quiet. In the quote, he says that basically, if he'd have written, so he's a very amazing orthopedic surgeon. He does new techniques all the time. He does osteogenesis. And he says, if I'd have made my show about science, nobody would have listened. Actually, I made my show about love, hope, and science. And that fulcrum between the three of them is what makes people interested in my show. And he said, so when you watch Supervet, this incredibly popular TV program, you have about 5 minutes where they're meeting the owners. The owners are talking about how important the pet is to them in their life. You're seeing pictures of the pet at home with its family. You hear about how old the pet was when they got the pet. And then you hear about what started to go wrong, how the owners felt when it started to go wrong. You hear about how they think the pet felt. It's okay, don't worry, it's too late now, thanks. Only there's a tiny single educational message in there, and then they move on to how the pet was afterwards, how the family feel now they're all happy and the pet's better. but they've got one educational message across in a really clear way. And people listen because it's a story about people and a story about animals, and that's what people are interested in. So I'm going to give you an example of how you can use that kind of idea. Instead of doing, say, when we say to vets, look, people are so interested in what you guys are doing. So let's write some blogs to highlight the incredible work that you're doing. You know, you do lap space. This is so cool. We need to tell people about it. Now, as a vet, the veterinary instinct is to start writing how you were taught at vet school. So signalment, presentation, diagnosis, differentials, workup, prognosis, and treatment. But people are not interested in that. People are interested in the story of the pet. So when we write case studies, we call them case stories, and we try to get vets to focus on the story of the pet and the owner, because it makes it so much more compelling and so much more interesting. Quotes from the owner take up more space in our blogs than quotes from the vet. But there will always be one educational message that comes through really clearly and that people will listen to and they'll engage with because they're interested in it. Content planning is a really important part so once you've got all your questions, you've got all your fears, you've got all the things you want to talk about, start planning it out. It makes it a lot easier to run your campaign. Now, if anyone would like a copy of this, I'm really happy to email you one because we've already made it, so you guys might as well have it rather than making your own. That's my email address. So there are other things, so you don't have to recreate the wheel at every turn. There are things that you can bolt onto your website just to sort of, this is our symptom checker, but there are other things that you can just bolt in to your website. So instead of having to make things from scratch, write all the content yourself, you can produce a really comprehensive resource. I think you need to be able to say to people, look, I understand that you want to look things up online, please come to my website. You can only do that if you've got a good resource on your website, and you're never going to be able to write everything yourself, and it wouldn't be that productive. So look out for these bolt-ons that can go into your website and do some of the work for you. And this is another example of a bolt-on. And finally, please make sure, so I've talked about writing case stories and trying to see it through the eyes of owners. And this was a really interesting Facebook post that we received on one of our vets' pages. So we'd use the word castrate, again, without thinking about it, because we're vets. And this was a really interesting point that the lady raised. Why does people use this word? So I know this is a bit difficult for you guys that are in a different language. I'm going to show you some other words in a minute. And hopefully the lovely interpreters are doing a good job at trying to convey what I mean. So castrate is a harsh, scientific, clinical word. It puts people off. So I've, with the help of my wonderful colleagues, collected together some words from different languages that fall into the same category. These are scientific, clinical words that put people off. So consider using these types of words instead, that are softer and more about the outcome rather than the process. Similarly, things like preventative care, so again, this is very much an English language point, but in the UK, vets talk about preventative care all the time. By preventative care, we mean fleas, worming, vaccination. Well, pet owners don't think that's what preventative care means at all. This is what pet owners think preventative care means. Emotional well-being, exercise, play, nutrition. We just need to learn to talk owner. So inform, measure, try and measure what you're doing. So measure, I'm not going to go through all of these now because we're a bit short on time, but measure how successful you're being, how many people are engaging with you, and how many people are visiting your website. And then after the, so you'll see there's 5 steps. The next step is reaching your audience. So you've made this amazing resource. You're talking about your brand very effectively. But now you need to make sure that people actually see that. And in the next session, we're going to be talking about how to make sure you actually get people there to look at what you've written and to look at your photos and to look at your videos.